Hi everyone, of course, back with John. It looks like you've changed your little area. You got some crazy stuff happening in the background, some posters. But first things first, John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Ocean compliance rules. I'm in the cafeteria area.
Yeah, caught you right after lunch. No, I mean things are good here, no complaints. But let's hop into it. I guess we're gonna do a general video this time. We'll talk about the production facility, talk about some of the excitement around results, some of the feedback you guys have been seeing, and then we'll go into maybe just chatting about potentially other acquisitions in the space, over the past year or 2 years, and maybe just give people an idea of potentially where Petvivo might be going. Do we want to touch on, general updates first? Maybe how's the production facility coming along?
They got pretty much everything in place. I think at the end of the month, we'll have the certification team come in. It's a third party. They do the check off and says, okay, you met all the requirements that you need for production from an FDA standpoint. And of course, our production standards are at the human level, even though we're making it for the companion animal space. So we're pretty focused on that. We have some of our techs in right now kind of figuring out where the layout of everything is going to sit at the final stage.
I guess the exciting part, you mentioned to me you injected a couple racehorses and some other stuff. Do you want to talk about any of that, kind of feedback, maybe even the results from those guys? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, the recovery time of the horse has been fantastic. It's got reduction 80-90% of time down. We talked about one that would normally take about 2.5 weeks, I think a week or two ago, and he came back around running in 2 days, back to training. He's doing quite good. We have another one going off today at a 15-1. So I actually had my friend go out to the track and make a little bet for me. So I feel good about that one. So it's kind of fun watching the results on the racetrack with some of the horses we've been injecting. We've had some good results recently. New vets that we got to use the product, they've come back, given us very positive feedback. And looks like they'll be ordering new product once they have a potential dog that needs the injection.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you might become a pretty well-known guy in the horse racing world if you start to, be giving people the secret formula.
I'd rather keep a low profile in that industry. I don't want to get a call from New Jersey.
We might have some good results next week. You might have to say if the horse won or not next week. Is there any other feedback, from owners? Obviously, we have a video going live, chatting about a past client, his dog, and what happened. So that was great. I think that's obviously an amazing feedback video. But is there any other kind of feedback from owners that you want to talk about?
Was another dog that had all four legs was having issues, and they actually injected all four, and the dog is doing tremendous. I mean, the owner said she's no longer planning on putting the dog down.
Wow.
So that looks like that dog life expectancy goes to fruition 4 or 5 years longer. I'll chat with her. She wants to do some type of endorsement. Maybe we'll do a video.
People are mentioning, that there's other acquisitions happening in the space, other things at least happening. Do we want to chat about any of these? Do we want to name names? Do we want to talk about, what's happened, maybe similarities?
I'll talk in generality terms. I don't like to get specifics of potential targets or that something that we may be targeting or they may be targeting us, but we can look at the sector as a whole. Takeouts are going out at 7 times sales or forward sales too, as well as the demographics are really good. Pet ownership in terms of households with COVID, I believe went from 68% to 74%. On an anecdotal basis, if we look at the various animal rescues and humane societies, they were pretty much cleared out. So that bodes well for us. And if you're looking at the growth numbers year to date and so on, the numbers are very strong. you're north of 5% growth per year on an industry that's at 90 some million a year in revenue. So that's quite significant growth. So we feel very optimistic, just as everyone in the industry feels optimistic, and that's what's leading to some of the acquisitions, because it's still cheap for them to acquire the growth and channels of distribution and add the product pipeline for some of the bigger players.
There's a lot of people obviously that are seeing this that aren't really familiar with what goes into acquisition or anything. But even the value, some companies are getting purchased, all they have is a product. You guys have patents and a lot of other stuff behind you. Do you want to chat about some of the additional values that go into a Petvivo valuation?
The uniqueness of us at this stage is when you look at most companies at this stage or even further along, have a lot less number of patents than ours. We have 18 patents on a global basis. And if you look at the potential product pipeline, we have 16 products, animal as well as human. And the focus is on animal right now, but humans is not that far away. And if you look at the total addressable market of each one of those products within our pipeline, you're looking at, in the billions of dollars. So when companies look at acquisitions, they look at, okay, what kind of revenues can we get out of each one of the products? But, then they look at, well, what advantages do we have that Petvivo doesn't have that can really expand the multiplier effect of earnings and revenue growth? So if they have a strong sales force, strong distribution network, and they're sitting here going, Petvivo doesn't have the distribution, but they have the technology and so on. And if they came in and partnered with us or did something like an acquisition, they can see how that really expands the revenue base. So it becomes extremely accretive because we're not a company that's in R&D that could generate a lot of R&D money that the company would have to expend in their acquisition.
I think the interesting spin, talking about the animal side, but also the fact that you guys are looking at doing humans, whether that's, potentially sooner rather than later, that definitely has to be pulled into the value, when people are looking at acquisition stuff.
Yeah, generally, I find most acquisitions are not accretive right away, just because from the standpoint, they have to shake up management. They usually cut out tiers of middle management because that's one of the reasons is you can really cut costs. So there's many variables to target. And it usually takes 2 to 3 years before the acquisition becomes accretive. I can go specifically to our case, it's quite different because we're not in a position of burning capital like many of the companies at our stage. So we feel we're in a great position to really roll out our products ourselves. So that gives us some pretty good leverage if anyone wanted to take a look at us.
Maybe just to explain in more general acquisition standpoint, you say, yeah, so usually these people have to come in and do this, do that. Do you know anything from the acquisition standpoint of typical pharma or biotech? What are these companies looking at? How does it usually happen? And, maybe give people a rundown of the process.
From a pharmaceutical standpoint, generally what occurs initially is a license agreement, because they're going to let them launch the product, start getting traction in sales, and then when they feel there's going to be a hockey stick approach to the revenues where it just spikes up, it's a plane taken off, that's when they make the acquisition, because they start calculating, well, we're paying these guys 5% royalties on top sales, and their sales are about to take off. If we amortize, if we can recover the acquisition within 5 years, I think they tend to pull the trigger. They look at those type of metrics to determine, as well as they look at the value of the patent portfolio or product pipeline portfolios.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously hey, it makes sense. Buy a company before their sales take off. I mean, it sounds pretty easy when you say it like that, John.
Well, it's financing itself, basically. If they're a partner with us and they got the sales network and they're moving product, they know when things are catching on fire. So that's the time they come and make the acquisition. You see that with major pharmas and device companies like Medtronic, St. Jude, Pfizer, they all get into partnerships with the smaller companies, and then when things are starting to take off, that's when they make their play to do the acquisition, because otherwise they're giving the money back to the company they're acquiring through royalties.